I'm Peter Ilgenfritz and the interim pastor at the Congregational Church of Boothbay Harbor. Today is Good Friday and a time that Christians around the world mark Christ's death on a cross. The hours traditionally marked from that hour of the 6th hour until the 9th hour, from noon until 3 p.m., when we gather together today, joining other Christians around the world in so many different places who are pausing and to remember this day. Sometimes Good Friday feels rather out of place and out of time, rather odd to have to stop in the midst of spring, of celebration, of joy, to pause and to make a space to remember pain and suffering and the ways it touches our lives, to remember the impact of violence and hatred, racism and fear on our lives and our communities. But this year, to gather on this Friday feels so appropriate and right. In the midst of a global pandemic, to pause together, to make a space to gather, to feel the pain and the suffering that we know in our own lives, that we hold for the whole world, and to hold this space and this time together. It is good to be together for these moments today. And it is important, amidst all of the dislocation and the disorientation of these days, to make and to mark a space for the holding of pain. For what can be named, can be talked about, and what can be talked about can be healed. And there is nothing on this day, nothing in these days, that we cannot name, that we cannot talk about, and that together we will find our way to healing and hope. Today is such a day of naming, and this COVID-19 virus has revealed us and revealed our world. It's revealed what we would rather not see and feel: our vulnerability, our fear, our anxiety, facing everything that is unknown and all that we do not know what to do with. It's revealed ourselves. It's revealed our common humanity, yes, as well. How all of us, people throughout the world, have been affected by COVID-19. And it's also revealed the deep divides in our world between peoples, rich and poor, those in developed nations and those in developing nations. All the particular ways this virus has affected us, those with access to health care and those who do not have such access. And in our own country, it has revealed the deep racism in our country, leading to the disproportionately high death rate of African Americans from this disease. It's exposed the continued divides in our country to health care. And it's revealed our own prejudices and how we strike out against Asian sisters and brothers in violence and abuse. We take this minute here at 3 o'clock to pause together, to remember in this minute together all that we hold in our hearts, for fear, for pain, for suffering, followed by the ringing of the bell here at our church, echoed perhaps by a bell at your own home. And we will conclude for a few minutes of prayer together. Together, let us make a place of silence together. And perhaps out of this silence, some naming. In reading the news each day, I sometimes get overwhelmed and sometimes sit with my journal to write while I listen to the news. These people and these places come from the news headlines for today. And so we remember today all who've been affected by COVID-19. For the almost 100,000 people around the world who today have died from this disease. For the particular people that we name who have died. For those whose health we worry about. And indeed even our own. That makes this global pandemic personal and real. Particular places that come to mind, and especially today, all the residents of New York City. For communities who have been especially impacted by this disease. For our African American sisters and brothers, for the poor, for those who lack access to health care, for migrants and immigrants, for all undocumented workers, for the homeless, for all where home is not a good or a safe place to be, for all victims of sexual abuse and domestic violence, for families with young children, for parents, for children, youth, and young adults out of school, for seniors unable to mark graduations, proms, and other end-of-year celebrations, for relationships and friendships that have been stressed and strained, torn by the fear and anxiety that rises and speaks in us during such times. For all who need a little grace, for all who struggle with depression, for all who live with mental illness, for all who struggle with alcohol and substance abuse, for all that are unable to sit beside a loved one, for all who are unable to be there present with the sick and with the dying, for all who cannot gather as they would with family and friends to grieve and remember the death of a loved one, for all who risk their health to serve, for all in healthcare, for nurses, doctors, caregivers, custodians, and administrators, for all who live and work in nursing homes and retirement communities, for all who serve us each day at grocery stores and pharmacies, gas stations and the post office, at government offices, for journalists and reporters, for emergency responders, ambulance drivers, the police and fire departments, for all who serve at food pantries, homeless shelters, and other places offering outreach and care, for workers in all vulnerable settings, for other places that come to mind, Bath Iron Works, Amazon, Navy ships, for all in the military, for the millions who are out of work today, and those who fear that they will be tomorrow, for fishermen, shopkeepers, artists, restaurant owners, restaurant workers, small and large business owners, for all who are unable to pay their rent and who worry about eviction, for all of the dislocated and disoriented, and for all the particular ways that we have been affected by COVID-19, for plans that have had to change, for hopes that have had to be altered, for disappointments, for the stress that we do not know how to carry, for the grief that we don't know what to do with, and for all that we do not know how to name but that weighs upon us, for the present grief that we feel, for the global grief that we hold, for the anticipatory grief of an uncertain future. Good Friday doesn't end with a blessing. It ends just with this making of space. For in the naming of our grief, we name our oneness. And what we can name, we can feel, and we can let the emotion flow through us. So let us let go. You don't need to have all the answers, to have all the certainty, to just allow the emptiness and to open our hands to all that we are feeling. Into your hands I commend my spirit, Jesus said, and then breathed his last. With open hands, anything is possible, even to do the one thing we need to do today, to love one another. Amen.